This arrest in the United Kingdom and then the subsequent conviction is very, very disturbing. Let me start off by giving you a kind of a summary from the BBC, just to give you some of the details of the story. This headline alone is pretty wild. Praying man breached abortion clinic safe zone. Praying man breached abortion clinic safe zone. I think this headline alone could be framed as an example of what a post-Christian society looks like. An abortion clinic safe zone is a zone in which preborn children can be legally killed, and somebody can't even pray near that clinic for their safety, for the conversion of the mothers going in. So prayer needs to be kept out of the safe zone so that babies can be safely killed. Of course, that's a contradiction in terms, but such is the civilization we now inhabit. Adam Smith Connor was outside the clinic in Bournemouth, the UK, in November 2022, where a public space protection order was in place. For North Americans, that's basically an abortion clinic bubble zone. We have bubble zones in Canada. In the United States, this would be like the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Abortion Clinic Entrances Act. The 51-year-old from Southampton denied failing to comply with the order, but District Judge Orla Austin said on Wednesday that his actions had been deliberate. Smith Connor was handed a 2-year conditional discharge and ordered to pay more than £9,000 costs. That's about $18,000 Canadian. Now, listen very carefully to this paragraph. Poole Magistrates Court heard the former serviceman, because he was an army vet, had his head bowed and his hands clasped outside the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, an abortion clinic in Ophir Road. The court was told he had been praying about his unborn son, who he said died from abortion 22 years ago. The safe zone, included in October 2022, bans activity in favor of or against abortion services, including protests, harassment, and vigils. Sort of a clever Orwellian turn of phrase there. It also bans all of the protesters who are going outside clinics to be in favor of what goes on inside, which is a thing, of course, that doesn't happen, but it does try to make this obviously totalitarian measure seem to be even-handed. And so I want to give you some more details on the story, but first I want to play for you Adam Smith Connor's statement outside the court this week.
I'm extremely saddened that the judge has found me guilty. This marks a dark and dangerous day for our nation, setting a legal precedent that thought crimes can occur in England. When George Orwell wrote 1984 in the year 1948, he meant it as a warning, not as a guidebook. It seems Orwell's predictive powers were off by 40 years, but apart from that, the notion that thought crime could become established in the British legal system was sadly accurate. I never imagined that the nation I love and has been so good to me in the past could turn on me for doing nothing more than offer up a prayer for my deceased son. I felt like my government had forsaken me. If the government can create thought crimes somewhere, it's only a matter of time before they create them anywhere. If you hold any controversial views at odds with the government, and we all do at some level, watch out. God and God alone gives us the inalienable rights and freedoms. It's the government's job to uphold these freedoms, not to suppress them.
So let me give you a couple of additional details about this case, because some might be tempted to think, well, he was one of these pro-life protesters outside an abortion clinic with a big sign. Maybe he was calling out to the women. And I want to emphasize here that I'm very supportive of 11th hour ministry work outside of abortion clinics. I've participated in it myself. I've been outside abortion clinics calling out to women, but this wasn't even that. And so ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, one of the most essential organizations in the West that defends Christians who have now fallen afoul of the new secular regime, they're the ones representing him, and they posted a press release giving some more details. And the military veteran and father of two was interrogated by the office on the nature of his prayers in 2022 when he stopped to pray for a few minutes near an abortion facility. In the decision, the court reasoned that his prayer amounted to, quote, disapproval of abortion because at one point his head was seen slightly bowed and his hands were clasped. This, again, is really an indication of the kinds of times that we live in. He stopped to silently pray near an abortion clinic, and he was identified as somebody who might be holding disapproval of abortion, as the court said, because his head was slightly bowed and his hands were clasped. So he was identified as a praying man and then targeted for being a praying man. Now, this story may seem like just another one-off story about a pro-life person being persecuted or prosecuted for doing something outside an abortion clinic, and of course clashes between the abortion industry and the authorities and pro-life. The pro-life movement has been going on for decades. But I think the story is more significant because in 10 or 20 years, we may look back at this story and see this as a major shift in the way the law treats certain things. Because what we're seeing now is, you heard Adam Smith Connor say in his statement that our rights come from God. That is not actually believed now by the majority of people who live in the UK. The UK is definitively post-Christian. By some measurements, the UK population will run out of Christians in about 50 years at the rate of current decline, at the rate of people leaving church and identifying as nuns or having no religion. The Prime Minister of the UK, Sir Keir Starmer, is the first atheist Prime Minister of the UK, and you'll notice that wasn't even an issue during the campaign. And so not even the Prime Minister believes in God. He doesn't believe that our rights come from God. So where do our rights come from? Well, then our rights come from the government. And the government will choose which rights that it emphasizes, which rights that it actually respects. And what we're seeing here is a realignment in our society. So we know that the sexual revolution has definitively conquered every single Western country. We can see that by every headline almost every day. And we cover these headlines on this show and at the bridgehead.ca and at other places. But what we're seeing now, with a bit of lag time, is that our legal system is realigning behind the new values of our society. And so, to put this in simple terms, our societies used to be ordered, at least in theory, towards the values of scriptural revelation. Every Western country, the UK, certainly one of the great Western countries of Christendom, Canada, the United States, we're all rooted in Judeo-Christian values. Now, however, we are rooted in the values of the sexual revolution: total bodily autonomy, the right to do what you want with whom you want, whenever you want, with the government taking care of the consequences. And as a result, we are now seeing our legal system realign behind that new value system, which is why many secular legal scholars believe that religious liberty isn't even a valid concept, that religious liberty is essentially just a cheap excuse for bigotry. And this is what we're seeing here with an army veteran convicted, again, for praying silently in his mind. He was not praying out loud. He wasn't reciting the Lord's Prayer near an abortion clinic. He wasn't calling out to women and offering them help. He was merely praying to himself, but he was identified as a praying man because his head was seen slightly bowed and his hands were clasped. I do think this story is a microcosm that highlights once again that we are seeing our legal system realign behind the values of the sexual revolution, and I think that we'll see this escalate in the coming years. I had an interview actually with Isabel von Spruce earlier this summer in the European Conservative magazine. We'll drop the link in the description if you're interested in reading her story. She was arrested twice for praying silently near an abortion center in Birmingham, England. But in a rare bit of good news for freedom of speech, she received a payout of £13,000 for the West Midlands Police in, quote, acknowledgement of her unjust treatment and breach of her human rights, 2 wrongful arrests and false imprisonment, assault and battery in relation to intrusive search of her person. They literally took her to the police station. This is just a pro-life woman, again, praying silently, and they walked up and they asked her, "Are you praying?" They wanted to check to see if she was praying, because it was fine if she was standing on the street corner silently, but if she was praying, then she needed to be arrested. Again, she was being arrested for the thoughts in her head. Taking her baby in to be killed at a clinic, fine. Praying to God in your head, not out loud, not fine, subject to arrest. And so this was considered to be sort of one of the first major thought crimes, but Von Spruce won her case, and that gave me some hope that Adam would win his case as well. That has unfortunately not been true, and the ADF is considering whether or not they're going to appeal his case. Hopefully they do. Hopefully they win. Hopefully this story ends up being a good news story for Christians in the UK and, of course, across the West, but we will have to see. Thanks everyone for watching that clip. If you'd like to check out our content on other platforms, you can find us on Rumble, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your content. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and spread the clip around if you like the content. Thanks so much.